and welcome to another ship review. Today we will talk about Executioner. Executioner is the Tech-1 attack frigate. As with our attack frigates, I would say that this ship is a decent choice in the current meta because it allows you to kite and mitigate damage with speed and range. And as a result, it gives you a decent engagement profile. For a ship that this cheap, I think this is pretty decent. The Executioner is the least popular among Tech-1 attack frigates, and it's actually one of the least popular Tech-1 frigate overall, which I find quite surprising because Executioner actually has a very good role as a web kiter with good control. No other ship can really do this, so this looks a bit surprising to me. Usually ships that are unpopular are either bad or just lacking obvious role, but Executioner is not bad and it has a decent role. And you can see it in the win rates as well. Executioner is in the top half at the very least, behind Breacher, Rifted Tormentor, and Condor, but still plenty of ships that are look worse in 1v1 win rates than Executioner. So the slot layout is pretty typical. You have 4-3-3. One of the high slots is utility high. You don't need this utility high for Executioner since you will be kiting anyways. I guess it was initially designed as a Scrum kiter, web kiter with Scorch, but in the current meta, the DPS of Scorch at Scrum ranges is just not competitive at all. So you see that almost every Executioner that you will meet in Faction Warfare will have beams fitted. And as a result, the dominant archetype nowadays is web kiting, so you fit Afterburner, Warp Disruptor, and web. And when you fit beams and try to stay around the edge of web range, so around 12-13 kilometers, and shoot with multi-frequency. You can also make Executioner a kiter with beams again, so it will be Macro Warp Drive, Warp Disruptor plus something else in the medium slot. This is a bit of off-meta choice, but I think it can work decently well again in the current meta with lots of Navy destroyers around. The engagement profile, as you can see on the map, is quite decent for a Tech-1 frigate. You have all Tech-1 frigates, all Tech-1 destroyers, and some Navy destroyers in your engagement profile. Ironically, and this is quite typical for attack Tech-1 frigates, Executioner scores higher against Navy destroyers than against Navy frigates, because Navy destroyers are more vulnerable to heavy control. Against Navy frigates, you very often go against double webs, and against double webs, this idea of web kiting just does not work, because you will lose your advantage in control. Okay, so next let's look at most popular fits. Okay, so we will start with the most popular and basic fit, which is web kiter with beams. This one is something that you will probably see most often when you fight Executioners. The fit is very straightforward. It's essentially just a cookie cutter frigate webkiter, guns, afterburner web scrum, and then some tank and some damage in low slots and rigs. So this feat can deal with brawlers and scrum kiters with a single web, and it can deal with close range destroyers quite well. It does not work against frigates with two webs, because when you will lose your advantage in control, and after that you usually lose the DPS race. And it does not work against long-range destroyers because it does not have enough mitigation. And with Executioner and with any Tactic 1 frigates, you need almost full mitigation against long-range destroyers to win DPS races. So overall, the engagement profile is acceptable, but it's quite polarizing. So there are some stuff that you can fight, and there are some stuff that you just can't engage. And if you keep it in mind, it works fine. I should also say that in general, and Executioner is not an exception, webkiters really want to be in position because they rely a lot on damage mitigation with range, and if you engage out of position, you give a lot of advantage to your opponent, and it may not work quite often. Okay, and the second feat is Kiting Executioner. This started to get more and more popular after 2022 as a response to all the Navy destroyers that were added in the game. The idea is quite simple. It's sort of like a slicer, but a slicer with better cap, and that relies a lot more on mitigation than on DPS. So you have beams in high slots. Usually you use standard for appropriate optimal range. You have macro warp drive and warp disruptor, obviously, and usually you feed a tracking disruptor in the medium slot, in the remaining medium slot. And nowadays you almost always want to have a tracking disruptor in a kiting feed because you want to counter long range destroyers. If you don't feed a tracking disruptor, then any long range destroyers will be able to push you off grid. So you prefer to have essentially tanking with mitigation rather than tanking with hit points. And when low slots are pretty self-explanatory, you don't have any hit point tank, you only tank with your mitigation. So heat sink, speed, and ancillary rep that you rarely will actually use, but it's helpful to repair the damage between fights if you don't have anywhere to dock. And rig slots are optimal range as usual with these feats. So overall, in terms of engagement profile, the Kiting Executioner would actually prefer to fight destroyers rather than frigates, but you can't fight frigates in this as well. The problem that you may see is that against afterburning frigates, your application will be quite poor since you are using beams on a very fast platform, and your DPS is really bad. Compared to a slicer with Scorch, for example, your DPS is significantly worse and your application is significantly worse. So this feat is quite a bit worse against frigates, but it's quite a bit better, I would say, against destroyers, since your cap is much better and your mitigation is much better as well. Again, unfortunately, a pretty polarizing engagement profile, but I would say it's large enough to make Executioner viable, especially considering that this is a very, very cheap Tick 1 frigate. And you can get some decent kills against Navy destroyers and it quite easily. Okay, this is everything I wanted to say about Executioner, so thank you for watching and I will see you in the next ship review.